he does what Boston Rob does on Survivor, which is find a couple women that can really support him and get him through the game, tell him it's raining, things like that, and then they all vote as a block at tribal council.
Meet Sarah and Samantha.
Two cousins obsessed with exploring the vast pop culture landscape, one recommendation at a time.
In each episode, one clueless cousin shares real-time reactions as they navigate the twists and turns of a pop culture topic selected by the other.
From travel to movies,
Little Debbie's to trashy novels.
Get ready to eavesdrop on the candid reactions and dynamic conversations you can only have with family.
This is Foreign and Familiar.
Welcome to Foreign and Familiar. I am Samantha.
And I'm Sarah.
Sarah, early podcast recording session today. It is pre-7 a.m. Chicago time. And seeing your face and your amazing hair, which you say you just woke up like this,
it's true,
makes it worth it.
I'm so happy to see you as well, Sam, even if it is an early hour.
Sarah, I just think one of the wonderful things about this season, and I'd like to think that little Deborah herself is a fan of us, because the amount of new cakes and treats and I would say pastries that Little Debbie has for us is insane. I would say that Little Debbie did not introduce new things into their lineup for a solid 35 years. I mean, I'm obviously completely wrong about that.
Right.
But for a really long time. And now 2025, in the year of our Lord, we have so many new Little Debbies.
Yeah, I've noticed that their choice to release new cakes and snacks has coincided with the Faux Fam pod. So I do think that they knew we were going to give them the free advertising, and we're just ready for that.
We have a rabid Faux Fam pod in research and development at Little Debbie. I am convinced of it. And thank you, whoever you are. So Sarah, without further ado, what are we reviewing today?
So today we're talking about the Nutty Buddy cake. This is a soft-baked yellow sponge cake layered with creamy peanut butter filling and coated in smooth, chocolatey frosting.
Now, for our family listeners, this is not to be confused with the Nutty Buddy cream pie, which we reviewed a little bit earlier this season. This is a second Little Debbie snack cake in a new Nutty Buddy flavor profile. I mean, they really seem to be going all in on the Nutty Buddy brand.
They do, and we'll have to do some digging into this. I almost wonder if it's like an anniversary for the Nutty Buddy, because I do know at one point we had checked that was one of the original snack cakes. I wonder if we're kind of creeping up on an anniversary. But yes, this is a brand new cake. Think like Twinkie shaped. I know that's not a Little Debbie, but that's the format that this cake kind of reminds me of. I actually just found out this morning that you've had this, so I'm so excited to talk about it.
I snuck one in. I was down in Tennessee, which is the home of Little Debbie. It was there. And I would say that, as with everything, I think all of our Faux Fam pod listeners know I am meh on a Nutty Buddy. I thought the cream pie was good, so I was willing to try the cake. We were gorging on Little Debbie's in our family vacation, as the Flynns tend to do down in Tennessee. And I will say I tried this one with my twin brother, so we did it in real time, but I kind of delayed it a little bit. I think that I was mistakenly under the impression that these had a super high calorie count, like the peanut butter cream pie. So I kind of kept saying to Jordan, because there's so many delicious treats everywhere down in Tennessee, I said, I just don't want to add another 500 calories. So when I finally read the box like a normal person and I saw they were only 140, I grabbed them. I had little to no expectations for it. And I would say, Sarah, this was 100% a slam dunk for me. Obsessed. I loved it. The cake was super moist. It was just the right amount of peanut butter in the center. The chocolate was a normal chocolate. It was not that little Nutty Buddy chocolate that just covers the stale flavor in all the other varieties. I thought it was a little bit small, but for 140 calories, I am not mad at that at all. It was really dense in the best way. 10 out of 10. I will buy them when I see them. They were fantastic. And if all of the other versions of Nutty Buddies is what I had to go through to get to this one, 100%. How about you? What do you think?
It was worth it. I totally agree. I thought this was a huge win. I love, like you said, that the calorie count was lower on this. I felt like I didn't need to cut it in half or in thirds or budget super well to fit this into my day. I also agree it was a little bit small. Like it felt very much like a 2-bite kind of situation. But the cake was moist, the chocolate was delicious, the peanut butter filling was a really nice change for most of Little Debbie's cakes that have like a white cream filling. So I really liked that.
I really loved it. Like, good for Little Debbie. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great.
Right. And it is just a single cake individually. They're not like a double packaged like the Nutty Buddies typically are. So I think that was a little bit confusing at first too, especially with a new cake. Not really. I mean, I know it says individually wrapped on the box, but of course I'm not going to read that. So just kind of not knowing, was it 2, was it 1, how big were they? And you're right, they only come in like the family size big packs. So the box is huge. There are 10 cakes inside, but it is a large package.
The thing that I think I'm realizing, both of us highly educated, master's degrees, both of us in different fields, correct? When there is a new or really kind of any Little Debbie, we become illiterate and we just make assumptions based on the outside of the box. And then we open it up like it's a toy surprise, like one of those like little things in Japan where you don't know what you're getting.
Exactly.
So yeah. That's something we found.
I ripped open that box without like looking at anything else. I just knew I needed to get inside. So you're right. All logic does go out the window.
That's what he said? I don't know, Sarah. This is a family podcast. Speaking of something else that needs multiple iterations to get it just exactly right, I am so excited to talk about our topic today. And we are returning to the world of anime. Sarah, I have just accepted I watch anime. I'm an anime watcher, and that's directly because of you and Cousin Husband.
I'm so glad that we were able to convert you to the anime community.
So I started slow. We've done a couple episodes, obviously Attack on Titan, then we've done Spy Family. We're going to talk about our topic today. But when I really realized that I had gone past the point of, I would say, return where I could say, no, I watch anime and I'm an anime fan. Not that there's any shame in it at all. I went with a friend earlier this year to go see the final 2 episodes of Attack on Titan in theaters. They were only in theaters one day. I got tickets. I stalked it. I went. And then also I sent you and Cousin Husband the Dawn to Dawn season 2 trailer, and I have it on my Netflix on when it's coming out for the next season. So I am all in on this. I'm all in on anime.
I love that for you. That makes me so happy.
Sarah, without further ado, what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about the 2009 anime Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
So many questions, Sarah. There's so much to talk about. So why don't we tee it up for our family listeners? What do they need to know about Fullmetal Alchemist?
Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, like a lot of anime, is based off of a manga of the same name. That manga is written by Hiromu Arakawa. There are, like you kind of hinted at, Sam, 2 iterations of this anime. There was Fullmetal Alchemist, first made earlier in the 2000s. That storyline was made before the manga was finished, and so it kind of deviated from the original story. They just kind of wrapped it up in a way that made sense to the writers of that show. And then once the manga was finished, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood was created. There is some discussion about which is the better series. Cousin Husband and I obviously prefer the one that we recommended to you, which is Brotherhood, that we're discussing today.
For our family listeners, a great way to think about it, which Cousin Husband and Sarah explained to me, is like Game of Thrones, the television show. So I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but I have read all of the Game of Thrones books, and I read them before the show started. I'm one of those that's absolutely insufferable about it.
You're an OG.
And for people that watch Game of Thrones or familiar with that universe, the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones match the books so incredibly well. And they're basically a retelling page for page of what happens in the books here or there. And then the dumpster fire last few seasons are when the showrunners are out of the source material and are just deciding this is what we want to do. That's how we end up with, spoiler alert, Bran on the throne, which is just an abomination. Bonus ep when we have enough time, Samantha rants on Game of Thrones. So to create the parallel and the allegory here, that is the original Full Metal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist, the Brotherhood, was completely done again to follow the manga, because I will never say it any way other than manga, from beginning to end. And so that's what the original author has decided the story is. And that's what Cousin Husband and Sarah recommended. I think I've read that there's 80 million copies in circulation, one of the most popular ever.
One of the reasons that we recommended this is because it frequently is on lists of top anime, top 10, top 100. So just to kind of give our listeners an idea, on IMDb, it is listed as number 11 in a top 100 anime list. On Reddit's My Anime list for the early 2000s, it is number 1 in that category. You can look up dozens and dozens of articles of top 30, top 20 animes, and it is consistently listed in one of those lists. It is also 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Very nice.
So while there aren't really a ton of awards associated with this anime, it is highly regarded by everybody who watches it.
I would say what's even more impressive about that is it accounts for recency bias. So again, you said 2009. I had no idea. I mean, that's 15, 16 years ago at this point. I see a lot of times people are talking about Vinland Saga, which I don't watch, or some of these other animes and say, well, this is the best anime of all time. And so there is that recency bias, but the fact that it's still kind of clinging in and around the top 10 almost 2 decades after its release, I think is really fantastic. Did we see any Fullmetal Alchemist stuff when we were in Tokyo or Japan together?
I think when we went in that really big store that had all the statues, I think there were a couple things in there. It's not one that I typically see things at like Hot Topic or Box Lunch. So I think it's a little more niche, though there is a full Funko set, which we of course have, of all of the characters. So there are those little pop culture moments, but it's not one that we typically see in terms of like merchandise.
Shout out to Hot Topic. I don't know what Box Lunch is, but maybe that's something we can chat about at another point in time. Anything else, Sarah, before we kick it to break and dive into the world of Fullmetal Alchemist?
Yeah, just a couple of other things. I know I said that this anime hasn't won a ton of awards. There were some nominations and wins for the People's Choice Voice Acting Award. So I think there were a total of 7 nominations. 3 of them ended up winning. And then also, I know, Sam, you were kind of bouncing back and forth between the Japanese with subtitles and the English dub. There are, I would say, a handful of voice actors who are super well known in the anime community because they have voiced really iconic characters in a variety of shows that are super popular. And so at some point we can dive down that rabbit hole of some of the names in bringing this show to life and where you may have heard them before, where they might pop up again. So with most TV shows, when we talk about them, I think we'll do a quick overview of all of the main characters, and then we'll kind of dive into the plot for the episodes that we've watched. We are ready to dive into Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. This show follows 2 brothers, Edward Elric and Alphonse Elric. Before we kind of dive into what they're going through in this show, just a little bit of background information. So they are alchemists. In this world, alchemy is, I think, not that different from other understandings of alchemy in literature. To make something, you have to use things that already exist, or they talk often about the idea of equivalent exchange. So you have to basically pay an equivalent cost to use this magic. It kind of manifests differently in different people. So there are different abilities that they have, different strengths that they're able to focus on. So Ed and Al are both alchemists. When they were younger, their mother passed away and their father left. And so they decided to try to use alchemy to bring their mother back from the dead, which is insanely taboo. That is not something that you do in the alchemist community.
It is the cardinal alchemist sin.
Yes.
Which they tell you in the opening, in the first 6 seconds. So there's like a pre-opening before the credits, and it just says human transmutation is the one thing alchemists can't do. And then it like goes right into the credits. So you're like, okay, I got it. Yeah.
Right. They come in pretty heavy with that idea to start it off. So they attempted human transmutation. It did not work. In the process, Ed lost his arm and his leg, and Alphonse lost his entire body. So his soul is bonded to a suit of armor. And they decide to basically work for the government and the military in the hopes that they'll be able to access research that will help them reverse the mistakes that they made and get their original bodies back.
That is a great synopsis. The only little additional color I would add is you said when they're younger. We're saying when they're younger, they were maybe 8 and 6. They're currently 15 and 12, or they're very, very young. And
Yes.
That's something that I think is prevalent throughout the whole series, is the adults that are supposed to be in charge in the military, or there's really no one looking out for them. They keep saying they're so young, they're so young. So they are very young. And I will say Edward is the older brother, but he is much tinier in stature, which becomes this running gag of people calling him little and small. And he loses his cool about it all the time, which I actually think is really funny, running gag going the whole way through.
I agree. So not only is he frequently called short and the younger brother because of his stature, but he has gained the nickname Fullmetal Alchemist. And part of that is because he does have an automail arm and leg, but his brother is an entirely metal suit of armor. So people frequently think that Al is the Fullmetal Alchemist. So basically his whole identity is questioned all of the time.
And I think it's really funny. And I would say I question it because he has the best braid I have ever seen. I thought about doing a braid for the video component of this today, and I thought, I'm not even going to try. It's Edward. I did not know until they said Edward that he was a boy. Like, I would have loved for it to be a girl, right? But he's got great braids. He's got great hair. And I will say real quick, Sarah, going back into how there's a really fast intro into this. I sit down and I'm trying to put on the first episode, and you're sitting and you are grabbing your drink and you're cozying in to watch. And I had to stop it at the time code, Sarah. 42 seconds into the first episode, they start explaining to you what a Fullmetal Alchemist is. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Did I miss all this right away here at the beginning? And so in it, essentially what makes Elric so special as the Fullmetal Alchemist is he does not have to draw the transmutation circles. He can kind of just put his automail and his hands together and do the alchemy without. I do think it's kind of interesting because in the beginning, you have all these people that are like, I'm going to do alchemy on you, but then they have to get down and like draw the little circle. So you're like, okay, that's kind of what Edward's super power is. And then obviously Alphonse is this gigantic suit of armor, so he's with no body, so he's pretty impenetrable, I would say.
Part of the equivalent exchange process, if you will, in losing part of their body, attempting human transmutation. They kind of gained this deep insight into secrets. I'm just going to say like secrets of the universe that people shouldn't really know. And in doing so, they now have the ability, like you said, to create a transmutation circle with just their own body, not drawing or having like a transmutation circle already drawn somewhere on them at all times. So that does make them more deadly. And in addition to that, they are just really, really great alchemists too. So we frequently, I think it's a pretty common theme throughout the show that that people are just sending these children to clean up these messes because they're the best at what they do.
They're weapons of the military state. And I think what's kind of nice and refreshing about it is I think that they know that the military can be shady, that there's a lot of gray areas, but they're so committed to getting their bodies back and understanding what they need to do that. I will say, and I think we're going to get into their motivations a little bit more, I actually feel like of all the animes that I've watched, that these two brothers are absolutely super refreshing. I think that they are really tender-hearted and gosh, do I say nice? The note that I have here is that Edward Elric, the main character, is the complete opposite of Eren Yeager in every single way, shape, or form. And it just makes you root for them and love them. And it's so silly, but Alphonse in that big suit of armor with his little child voice and his tender heart. Oh, he's just adorable. He's adorable. And it's so weird because it's like he's just a suit of armor, but he's just so cute. I'm invested.
I agree with that. I think in contrast to Eren, yes, they crossed this line in the past, but they are living the consequences of it. And I think that they now have very hard lines that they will not cross, and they know that other people should not cross. Whereas Eren had those lines and was very okay with blurring them to get to the point that he needed to. And I think in both cases, they are trying to protect the ones that they love, but the way that they go about it is quite different.
I just think you line these two guys up and they could not be any more polar opposites. And unfortunately, I think Attack on Titan has scarred me because there's no way that I believe that there's going to be a happy ending for these two. Do not say anything. Here's how I know I'm super into it, because I don't even want to Google things. I didn't even want to Google to research for this because I don't want any spoilers. I know I sent you a little Fullmetal Alchemist GIF this morning in our text message thread, and I thought, what if a GIF that pops up is a big spoiler alert or something like that? But I haven't found that way. But yes, it makes me want these brothers to succeed so well, and I'm just conditioned that there will not be a happy ending. I think what I'm picking up about anime is it's a different storytelling mechanism than Western storytelling, where like, you know, Attack on Titan, you just think there's going to be a redemption arc, and then spoiler alert, like there isn't one, right? And so I just feel like I'm conditioned to believe that these brothers are going to achieve what they want to achieve and get their happiness. But I also feel like, no, they have told you right at the beginning of this that they will not get their bodies back, that this is a unreversible thing. And so I'm just teetering on the line. For our family listeners, I'm holding my face in my hands right now. But yeah, and so I'm sorry, I'm totally diverting, but I'm big fan of both brothers, want them to succeed. And yeah, they don't take any of the things that they're doing lightly. It's so refreshing from you know, somebody dies because of something they're doing and they're crying and they're visiting the family and they, you know, it's, I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Totally fine. I could just like gush about them forever because I love them as well. But we should probably move on to this isn't a 4-hour podcast about Ed and Al. So as we mentioned, Al is a suit of armor. Ed has an automail arm and leg. He has a family friend, Granny Rockbell, and her granddaughter, Winry, to thank for that. So they are both automail mechanics. We do see them a little bit more later on in the show, but whenever we're first introduced to this history that Ed and Al have, they do play a key role in kind of fixing up Ed and providing him with the opportunity to use his automail arm and leg.
Or as they say in the Japanese with the subtitles, Winry, which is so cute. And she's a little hottie, you know, she's got the little bandana and her crop top out. She's working in the garage and stuff. I like her. I mean, obviously the subtext is that her and Ed, well, I think Ed has a crush on her. I don't know. There have been some moments going halfway through season 2 where I'm like, Ed, kiss her, you know, but he's 16. So he does play as a 16-year-old, which is refreshing as well.
They're definitely not like going romance heavy with any of the stuff that's going on. If there are any hints to it, it's just a very, very, very sub part of it to make you kind of think about it. But I agree. I think Winry is just a gearhead and I love her. I think she's super sassy. She, not like giving any spoilers, I think she becomes a major player more later on. So I'm super excited for you to see that.
I also like that she gives them the business. So he gets his arm ripped off. So that's the other thing. I mean, it's not that they're all impenetrable. I mean, they fight and they kind of take their licks, and she's got to fix him a couple times, and I'm only halfway through season 2, so I can only imagine that continues to grow. But she tells him, you're an idiot. You shouldn't be doing this. Like, she kind of really gives him the business. And then she tries to tell him the difference in some of the automail. Oh, I didn't have the right material, so you're a little bit weaker. He brushes her off and then he remembers it in battle, right? But she's awesome. I really like her.
Early on in the show, I think we're kind of slowly given all of these pieces of information to explain why there's this boy with metal arms and a suit of armor running around the city. But early on, we have a alchemist who has kind of gone rogue, Isaac the Freezer. And so there is this kind of citywide search to find him. The plot, his plot to kind of take over Central, where the government is housed, comes to light. And so we have all of these key alchemy players working to take down this alchemist. So of course we have Ed and Al, who are a key part in playing in taking him down. We're also introduced to Roy Mustang, Sam, who I think we kind of teased as the Levi Ackerman of this show. So I know you're still early on and knowing where the story is headed. Give me all of your thoughts about Roy Mustang so far.
He is the Kirkland signature Levi Ackerman, and quite frankly, he has done nothing. I am halfway through season 2. I know Cousin Husband is a big Mustang fan and says you're going to love him. He's the flame alchemist. I have seen nothing. I have seen in season 1 them saying, well, you can't use your alchemy because it's raining. And obviously he has an emotional moment at the end of season 1, but I don't know anything about him. He just got transferred over to Central in season 2. He's leading the charge. So I can tell he's a good guy. He's working from within. But honestly, I have no opinions on him because he's done nothing. But I'm sure he will do more. But, you know.
Yeah. I think at this point, really, his only kind of key role is that you can tell he cares about Ed and Al, and to the degree that he can as their military superior, he does try to look out for them.
I will say, though, he lies to him about Colonel Mace, and that unraveled 17 seconds after he walked the other way.
Yeah.
So I get it. Here's what I'll say about him. He is acutely aware of their age. He is acutely aware of how they will process certain things. And that's much more than I can give a lot of the other people that are in the military or the other alchemists that are in the series. So I will say that. I'm sure he's going to be great, but as of right now, no crush on him. Appalled by the Levi parallel. I mean, they both have black hair, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah, sorry, not sorry, Sarah.
It's okay. I forgive you. I'll take your apology later on. Don't worry about
We'll do a follow-up. We'll do a follow-up when I finish the series.
His second in command, who again we don't really see a lot of action from right now, is Riza Hawkeye. Anything to share about her? She's another one that I think later on really comes into play.
Is she the blonde?
She's the blonde, the one who's always like, you can't do alchemy, sir, because you're wet.
Right. Yeah, I think that whole little cohort, they're all his. Obviously, he does what Boston Rob does on Survivor, which is find a couple women that can really support him and get him through the game, tell him it's raining, things like that, and then they all vote as a block at tribal council. I think that whole group is good. They're all good-hearted, I can tell that. Mm-hmm. But at this juncture, a little bit indistinguishable.
That's fair. Very fair. I think she's kind of the voice of reason to his hot-headedness. I think he's very much just willing to jump into action without thinking anything through. And she's the one who's there to kind of say, like, you can't do that. That's not going to work. So I do appreciate that.
I just haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure. Like, I haven't seen him. I have not seen fire come from his fingertips or anything yet.
It's always been raining or he's always been wet.
I look forward. There has to be, knowing anime, there has to be some scene where he finally, for lack of a better term, gets to cook and you see how devastating he is. And I bet you that's awesome. I bet you that's fantastic. I look forward to getting to that point. But right now, he's just moving from point A to point B, getting rained on.
Oh, yeah, totally fair. So we'll move on and we'll talk about him at another date. So one of the other alchemists that I think we're introduced to at this juncture is Alex Louise Armstrong, who is just, I think, a personal favorite of mine, more for kind of the comic relief that he brings.
He is the pimp hand alchemist. So essentially his right hand gets strong and he pimp slaps people. He has this old school, like a man in the 20s lifting a barbell. He's got that type of mustache, but it's blonde. He's completely ripped. And he does have a soft, gooey center. And I think that that's really funny. But also at the same time, he does give me a little bit of pedophile vibes. So he strikes me as the type of person that would tell any 13-year-old that their stick figure drawings are really good and why don't they come over and he can teach them how to draw better. And that doesn't have to stay in the podcast if we think it's a little bit too far, but he does have a little bit. He's a nice guy though. I like him, but sometimes I just think, okay, well, your alchemy is that you got a strong arm.
Yeah. I think there's always that like one moment, no matter what anime you're watching and how wholesome it is, there's that one moment that you think, please don't let anyone walk in the room while I'm watching this. And for me in this show, it's definitely him. And
he's topless a lot.
He is topless a lot. And he's always kind of surrounded by this like rose colored background as he's waxing poetic about something.
And they do make him really silly and like love. So one thing I will say about the show that I actually really appreciate is it seems to me like they really mix types of animation or drawing in it. So there's so much, like it'll go from the serious them fighting or being drawn to a throwaway line about Edward's height, or you'll have Captain Strongarm come in here. And then all of a sudden it's switched into an even more cartoony, sweats come. It's hard to describe, but it's almost like a mixed media anime. And I like that because it keeps it interesting to watch and the tone really fun. And I don't know that I've necessarily seen that. Like Spy Family is a different type of anime than Attack on Titan, than Dandadan. And what I like about the anime art form is you can tell so much by drawing, right? Like they can put a shadow over someone's forehead and you know that person's bad, or you know that there's something else going on. So there are elements of that, but there are just times where they will stop the live action anime and put up a very, very cartoony, exaggerated still photo of the two brothers or of something going on, and they'll voice over what's going on, and then they go back into the live action. So I've never really seen that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Part of it is the writing of the show too. I think that if you think about it, the topic is really, really heavy. Like, we have these kids who are essentially orphans trying to resurrect their dead mom and paying a terrible price for it. You have an older brother who is trying to take care of his younger brother, and he knows that he can't do that. So I think the tone could get really, really heavy, but they throw in so many of these little comedic moments, like the little sketches. And I think a lot of the times it's like Ed's soul leaving his body because somebody told him to drink milk because he's short. So we have all of these little comedic elements.
They do some one-off side stories. I'm thinking of the one with the pickpocket in particular. She's awesome. I mean, they do some side quests. There's that whole episode with the pickpocket with, what's her name?
Panina.
Yes, with Panina. And so I felt like, I just feel like the pacing is really good here. They stay on track and they stay on message. And there are a few side quests, but they all funnel back into the world building and the main one. So I do like the pacing on this, for sure.
I think that they do a really good job of sticking to the story, of deviating enough that you don't get bored, but tying everything back into the bigger picture at the end.
It's a very cohesive narrative. I'm halfway through season 2, and I'm tracking the story very well. I'm on some rewatches of Attack on Titan where I feel like I have to keep rewinding. Like, Attack on Titan got very, very dense.
Yes, it got very complex very quickly.
And with Spy Family, nothing happens so much that sometimes you forget what's going on when it comes back in. I think Full Metal Alchemist does a very, very good job of keeping it front and center and reminding you of what's important without beating you over the head with it.
So I think the last kind of character that we're introduced to early on is Scar, the Ishvalan, who kind of getting into the history of this world. So there was a civil war in the past with the Ishvalan people. The vast majority of them, almost all of them, were killed. So we do have one Ishvalan who is still alive. His name is Scar. And the only reason that we know he's Ishvalan is because of the color of his eyes, which are red. Unlike an alchemist, he's kind of painted as a destroyer, so he doesn't really create things using alchemy. He is just kind of setting out to kill alchemists who he deems as evil, which is like all of them. And he sees it all as a religious calling, seeking justice. And so, of course, he's painted as this villain who is out to kill every alchemist.
I love an unpredictable anti-hero. I have watched enough of this art form to know that he is not the bad guy and or will have some sort of morality check. We'll learn more about what's going on. But he pops up out of nowhere, and there is something that is interesting and uncomfortable about, yes, somebody that is acting on his own, believing that he's acting from a religious perspective and saying, I don't really care what side you're on. If you are using alchemy inappropriately, then I'm taking you out because that's not how we're supposed to do it. And quite frankly, I can't even believe, I'm just thinking right now when he shows up, one of the saddest thing that I think I've ever seen from an anime perspective is very early in some of these episodes. I mean, it's really, really dark. And I'm actually really glad that Scar is in the show because there needed to be some sort of repercussion or consequence for that. And it's very clear that nobody in the world that we have right now, like, the military's in on it. There's all this stuff. So I actually like the uncertainty of when he's on screen. I would, again, to kind of go to Game of Thrones, I got dragged into watching House of Dragon. That's another one that I cannot recommend because it's ridiculous. However, the character of Daemon in season 1 in House of Dragon, whenever he is on screen, you clench a little bit because you don't know what he's going to do. And he does that in the season. Like, people will just be talking, all of a sudden he'll cut off their heads out of nowhere, or he'll do this or he'll do that. And I think that that kind of chaos makes it an enjoyable watch on a first run, even though you're uncomfortable. So I like him.
Yeah, I agree. I think anytime there's a character who says, like, you have to pay for your sins and kills people, I'm always like, okay, things are going to get crazy. Either there's going to be a big fight, this person's going to be completely unhinged, whatever it is. If they are on screen, I know that we're going to probably get some good action. So I totally agree with that synopsis. And I think in the first few episodes, we're also introduced to the leader of the country, Fear King Bradley, just very, very briefly, as he kind of comes in at the last minute to help the alchemists defeat Isaac the Freezer. Any thoughts on King Bradley?
King Bradley can get it. He can get it. He's, built. I think he says in one episode, I'm 59. I have to prove I still have this. And I'm like, Daddy, like, get over here. I don't care what his affiliation is. Okay. It doesn't matter. I think, he's complicated. I'm sure I'll end up not liking him. The one thing that I never can really get over on the anime side of it, just again, another tangent, is the German influence in anime. We talked about it a little bit on Attack on Titan. Lots of Rainer Brown, right? Sasha Browse, King Bradley's referred to as Führer, right? And so I'm always just so interested in that German-Japan pipeline. Maybe it's a World War II thing. I don't know. But it's, out of all the cultures, I just find it so interesting. The Japanese anime so heavily uses German culture across the various properties that we've seen. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I totally agree, because thinking about it, obviously it's very heavy in Attack on Titan, as we can see. Even in Spy Family, I don't know necessarily German influence, but it's very Eastern European.
Yes.
And in every aspect of it. And then also heavily influencing Fullmetal Alchemist as well. So I have been wondering the same thing. I haven't done any research on it. I'm almost wondering if it's one of those things where it's just, as a writer, you pull from what you know a lot about, and that happens to be maybe because of some connections from World War II, German influence. I don't know. I think, like, in the US, a lot of times we're like, oh, we totally get the British, and I'll just write a British character and have no issue with it. So I don't know if that plays into it, but I am just now realizing that of the 3 anime we've done for this podcast, all 3 have had some sort of influence.
And I would say there was zero German influence when we were in Japan. It's not like there were
right.
When we travel, we see the Irish diaspora, like, all over wherever we go. It's not like we ran into little conclaves of German food or anything like that in Japan. But anyway, back to King Bradley. Clearly has an anger problem. I'm not saying, but I just think, like, he can get it, and I'm a fan. I don't think I'm meant to be a fan. I don't think I'm going to continue being a fan. I have to be honest with you. If anything happens to either of these brothers, I'm not taking any more recommendations from you and Cousin Husband on any. Anime breaks my heart. I can't do it with these ones. On Attack on Titan, it was a different thing. It was like you were there when I jumped off the couch, the first word that came out of his mouth. And I said, this small dick loser has a complex and an issue. And ding, 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 I was right. These two, I don't know that I need these brothers to get their bodies back, but I need them both to survive. And Sarah, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not going to watch anything else if it happens. But anyway, that might be a good place for us to go to break as we get in. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I think after Sam has just basically threatened me that she won't watch anime if I pick poorly.
I'm not even just threatened watching the anime. I'm not doing the podcast anymore. I cannot be emotionally manipulated by anime anymore. I can't do it. I've been watching anime for 2 years. I can't do it.
Okay, so on the note that our podcast is in danger, let's cut it to break and we'll get back into Fullmetal Alchemist when we come back. Back. One of the things that we were kind of chatting about on break is the overarching kind of religious tone to this show, which will kind of take us into the next direction we need to head plot-wise. But Sam, did you want to kind of add anything about that before we move on?
Yeah, so I think what's really interesting is that there is a lot of root in religion in this show, and you'll see it kind of in as the villains. Again, what I've noticed from Attack on Titan and some of the other ones is that the church was involved in a cover up in Attack on Titan as well, or they're kind of not on the right side of it. And I just think it's very interesting because Japan is a Buddhist country. And so we went to some of the temples and the parks when we were there, Sarah. And one of the things that I've noticed as we've been traveling across the world is when you go to Europe, or I went to South America for the first time earlier this year, and you see these big cathedrals, and they're just absolutely beautiful and breathtaking and stunning. Whether you're religious or not religious, you walk in there and you see, how did they paint the ceilings? How did they build this when, we would have trouble building it today and we have so much more technology? I mean, it's really works of art. But when you go over to Japan, or when you go over, I've been to Bali, some other places in Asia, obviously that's Eastern culture and different religions. So when we were walking around Japan, I mean, you see nothing religious everywhere. I mean, there's a very hard separation. I mean, even more so, I'd say, of church and state, where you can't express anything, or people just don't express anything, I would say. And I do find it interesting because in some of the animes that we've watched here, the perspective, it feels like, from the overarching Japanese writers and the people that are creating this anime is that the people in religion are 100% abusing their power. They are bad. They are hiding a narrative and a cover up. And it doesn't bother me, but I do notice it as a pattern. And I do just think it's interesting, when you're looking at different cultures and some of the things on how it gets there. Again, I'm just hypothesizing in some of our travels, but I was a little bit surprised at how heavily this seems to be skewing over into the religious side of it.
There are a variety of other animes that kind of focus on different religious elements that I can think of just off the top of my head. And so I do think that this is kind of a consistent theme. And I also am not sure exactly why either, because as you said, when we were in Japan, we did that like walking tour through the Shinto temple. I remember our tour guide saying that on like Christmas, everyone is 200% religious because they're Shinto, and then they also are Christian to celebrate Christmas. So it is not it is not a country that is very diverse religiously, and so it is interesting that the authors of a lot of the manga and the anime that we're talking about have really focused on those elements.
I mean, you do see religion as a justification for a lot of things, and you see it even in different shades in this specific manga. So we'll get into the main villains in a second here, but even when we're talking about Scar and the Ishvalan, like, he believes that any misuse of alchemy is a slight against God. So it's just worth noting. I was surprised that it goes from some sort of alchemy and magic and stuff like that into really kind of naming the 7 deadly sins.
Right. So speaking of the 7 deadly sins, we find out about this priest who is supposedly working miracles. Ed and Al decide to investigate because they suspect that he is using a philosopher's stone, which, yes, just philosopher's stone, whatever you're thinking, is probably exactly what it is. So upon further investigation, they're able to kind of debunk him and figure out that it was not necessarily a philosopher's stone, it was a fake, which is disappointing to them because they are at this juncture kind of putting all of their eggs in the one basket of maybe a philosopher's stone would be the answer to us getting our bodies back.
And I think the less said about that episode, the better. I don't know. That's episode 3 or 4. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier. One of the saddest things that I think I've seen in anime, and it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, this show kind of gut punches you. The stakes are high. It never feels gratuitous. And again, with some of the pacing, you're like, oh, this is great. These are their new friends. And look at how cute this is. And again, I don't want to, it's worth seeing what happens. But you just then think, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be a little feel good episode, you know? But we'll save that. I think it's just too sad to talk about, I feel.
No, I totally agree. And actually, when I was rewatching the first few episodes of the show, just to kind of make sure I had all of my notes written, I pressed play on this is episode 4. So if you're familiar with the show, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you're not, I'm so sorry when you get to this point. But I pressed play without even thinking about it. And as soon as it started, I just said, oh no, I didn't want to watch this one. So after finding out that the Philosopher's Stone was a fake, we are kind of introduced to 3 characters named Lust, Envy, and
Gluttony.
Gluttony. Thank you. I could not think of his name. So you can probably make some conclusions from that those are 3 of the 7 deadly sins. There might be 4 additional at some point.
You know, it's funny that you say that because as I'm being introduced to the additional ones, I'm like, oh, they are going to do all 7. But for me, I was just like, oh, okay.
After kind of this failed attempt at finding a philosopher's stone, Ed and Al find out about a alchemist who has done some more research in the field of human transmutation the correct way, supposedly. And so they do go to spend some time with him to learn about what he is doing. He is trying to just make sure that he meets all of the standards as a state alchemist. Every year you kind of have to submit basically a piece of research to show that you are still qualified to be a state alchemist. And I think that's probably where we want to leave it for that one, because as we said, neither of us really want to talk about it. It is not helpful information for the boys at all. At this point, Ed and Al decide that they are going to do some research into creating a philosopher's stone in the hopes that that will help them get their bodies back. Sam, I don't kind of throwing you on the spot here. I don't know if you remember what they find the kind of key ingredient for a philosopher's stone is.
Human
beings, yes. So and not just human beings, you have to kill several people in order to create a philosopher's stone. So another dead end for them,
because they're not going to do it.
Exactly. Again, they have those hard lines that they will not cross.
Yes, hard lines. So, and that's what makes you love them is, again, I'm so jaded. I thought, okay, well, who they gonna kill? They're not willing to do it. Oh, they're so tender-hearted.
They sure are. As they are at the 5th laboratory hoping to find more information, there are 2 guards that they, of course, have to fight in order to get inside the laboratory. And Sam, they learn something really interesting about these 2 guards.
They are both empty suits of armors. Yes. For some reason, I'm tracking that as a prison, or they take the prisoners and they transmute their bodies into the suits of armor. So now Al is not, I don't want to say he's not special because he's my special old boy, but he's not one of a kind, and they can kind of start learning a couple things from these prisoners. But it also really levels the playing field because now you just have empty suits of armor that are never going to really get tired. I will say though, and I think I said a little bit earlier, these kids kind of get their butts kicked. I mean, Al at one point is completely ripped in half, and they have to put him, oh my gosh, it's so cute. They put his top part in the sheep in the carrier in the train when they're trying to get back and like have them together. And yeah, so they find out that there's a whole other cohort of people like them.
Exactly. And it kind of puts Al in a weird situation where he kind of starts to question, is he actually a real person at all? Did he ever exist outside of the suit of armor? Is he just a creation that his brother made? And so I think we've talked several times about this show being very tender, but I think this is where we see like a really tender moment between the two of them where Ed is, you know, he's obviously hurt by this, but he's also trying to just help Al work through his feelings in a way that makes sense to him. So I don't know. I always loved watching that part.
Yes, and also they don't really stay there too long, which I like, but you have to remember Al is what? I want to say 9. But he's a little bit older, I think. But not much. 14.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like they're just, yeah, they write them as 14 and 16-year-old boys. They're always on the same page. They say, we want to get our bodies back, but we're not going to do this. Or they talk through their problems. And yeah, there are just some really unexpected, very tender moments in the show amidst a backdrop of insanity.
To kind of wrap up the first season of Fullmetal Alchemist, we kind of end on not a great note. So we haven't really talked about Maze Hughes at all, Sam, but to kind of wrap us up, do you have any thoughts that you want to share about Colonel Maze Hughes?
No, I don't want to talk about Maze Hughes. He's wonderful. He supports the guys. He's a family man. He's a good egg, and I should have seen it coming that he was the sacrificial lamb.
I understand. So Maze Hughes is almost like a father figure to Ed and Al and even Winry, I would say. So he is always inviting them over for dinner. He's always, you know, talking about his wife and his daughter and how amazing they are. And so they really grow a close relationship throughout the first few episodes of the show. Right around the end of season 1, Maze Hughes starts to put some pieces together that at this point, I think we know that there's an enemy force. We just aren't quite clear on who all's involved and who the leader is. So he has figured out some pieces of information that are very telling about whatever this evil force that is working is. And so, of course, he has to be taken out. And we saw Envy, one of the 7 deadly sins, earlier when talking about the priest who was using the Philosopher's Stone. Envy is kind of like a shapeshifter. He can look like any person. And so in this elaborate plot to kill Maze Hughes, the most heart-wrenching part of it, I think, is that he transforms into Hughes's wife and then shoots him in a phone booth. So absolutely heartbreaking. And then, of course, all of the characters are dealing with the grief surrounding this. Mustang, Ed, Al, Winry, everybody is dealing with the grief of losing Colonel Hughes.
I think that you're leaving out. He's not just shot in the phone booth. He's holding the picture of him and his family. And then the anime has his blood cover the picture after he dies. It's just insanity. It's just absolute insanity.
Yeah, I feel like in this show in particular, there are so many parts that it's really hard to describe them. You just have to see them. And I think this is definitely one of them because they do, I feel like they do put so much effort into making your heart break throughout this scene. And so they do pay close attention to all of the little details about that.
I will say though, again, and I know I keep doing the parallel back and forth, the tone of this, they don't rest. There are some really dark moments. I think what's kind of cathartic is you see the characters grieve it and process it and talk about how messed up it is on camera. And there is some reprieve in it. And so it's a good watch. Like you know, there are moments on Attack on Titan where I'm like, I can't even watch this. It's so depressing and pessimistic. And there is zero reprieve. up to the last scene, there's zero reprieve on it. And so even though there are these really heavy moments that we're talking about, I'd like our family listeners to know it is toned all right, and it's a good watch.
So to kind of wrap up the first season, or the first like chunk of episodes, depending on how you're watching it, on Netflix it is broken up into seasons or parts that end with, I think, episode 13. So end of the season, we kind of get a flashback to when Ed and Al are children. We get to see their dad for, I think, the first time, Hohenheim, who is this really great alchemist, not super present. Anything else to add?
Big Grisha Jaeger energy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, he kind of gives off those weird vibes that, like, I don't know, there's something there that is just making you cringe.
Yeah. And he's a great alchemist. I mean, clearly he's still alive. Clearly.
So that's Sam's prediction for the rest of the show. And then I think at the last episode, we're introduced to another one of the 7 deadly sins. This time it is greed. So we are kind of getting closer to painting the full picture of who all is involved with this plot that is somehow malicious.
Greed is hilarious. He's got some sort of, I don't know, armor shield or something. He completely changes his look. I sent you and Cousin Husband a clip. I just thought it was the funniest thing I've seen. It's him, Greed, and he's facing off against Elric and Sensei, his teacher, woman teacher, who is awesome. Love her, love the character. And he sees that he's getting into a predicament, and he literally tells the two of them, I'll be running away now. And then it cuts to him running away down the hallway. And I just thought that was really funny to keep it. I mean, it's like, I'll be running away now. And then he just runs away. They just let him run away. So, well, she's sick. But yeah, no, he's cool. He's dope.
Yeah, I think Greed is probably my favorite of the 7 deadly sins, followed closely by Envy. I feel differently about them at different watches. Sometimes I'm like all in on Envy. Sometimes I'm like, Greed is the best character. So it kind of depends on what mood I'm in.
Well, you know, I'm always all in on Lust, but that's because that's my personal favorite deadly sin. So I'm surprised. No, but she's a little bombshell. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. I like her too. I think that kind of wraps up the first part of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. So let's kind of wrap it up, Sam. So after your first watch, and I know you're still working your way through season 2, I'm guessing you plan to continue the series, since it sounds like you have to find out what happens at the end.
I'm going to continue the series. I'm going to watch the original, and then I saw that there are some, and I'm sure that they're absolute trash, but that there's a live action movie that came out in 2017 that's on Netflix right now. So obviously I don't want to watch that until I watch the anime and know what's going on. I want to be clear, I have every intention of finishing this and then again watching all the properties. However, if something happens to the brothers, if something like that, I'm not watching any of it. And then it'll be our last Sarah. Here's what you'll do. You will come on a bonus app by yourself and we'll drop it. And you'll be the one that has to announce the end of the Faux Fam pod. That's
a fair trade-off, I think.
Okay. Right.
So yes, there are at least 2 additional movies. There's the live action, which is absolute garbage, but have fun with it.
Tell the story in live action or in 97 minutes or however long it is.
I don't know. Here's the thing. Like, there's some anime that I think I would love to see a live action of this. I'd love to see how they do it. But then I see live actions of anime and I have not really seen a good one. So there was a live action Attack on Titan. No. The live action Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. No. Another one that I would recommend is Death Note. There's a live action of that. Also just no. And that one is very Americanized. They just kind of took the main parts of the story and were like, let's just do something different with it. So, just no. I'm good on all of those notes. But there is plenty of content for you to watch.
The one thing I will say on the live anime is that I see some of these bootleg off-Broadway productions, and to me, that's all sorts of yes for all the wrong reasons.
I totally agree. If the like stage performance of Attack on Titan came to a city that we could go to, I would 100% go see it. Absolutely.
I would fly for it, and it would be trash, but I would go. Yeah, I would go. So let's keep an eye out for that.
Yes, for sure. I know you have a few friends that are into anime. Would you recommend this to any of them?
Totally.
Awesome.
And it's a caveat. Again, I'm halfway through, but totally. I just can't believe that they're going to break my heart. I just can't believe it. But we'll see.
Yeah. And finally, let's rate it to a Little Debbie. So how does this fall in the lineup?
This one is so tough because, again, I'm only dealing with half of it. This reminded me a lot of Sailor Moon. So I loved Sailor Moon used to air on the USA Network between 6 and 7 a.m., 7, 8 a.m. And I used to watch it before I would go to school when I was in middle school, high school. And so that was my first. I actually want to get back in and watch Sailor Moon again because now I watched the Americanized version of it. And so I probably will have to watch it again. This reminded me a little bit of Sailor Moon because I felt like when they were introducing all the different alchemists and what their powers were, it was like, okay, this one is Sailor Venus. This one is Sailor Mars. There's one that does water. And you're like, okay, this is Sailor Jupiter, you know? So it felt, and some of the drawing and stuff is similar. Lust in particular is drawn like villains in Sailor Moon is drawn. So I feel like this might be the boy version of Sailor Moon. All that to say, I'm going to rate it as a star crunch because there's a little bit of the 90s nostalgia. I appreciate it and think it's delicious for what it's worth when I'm remembering it coming in. And yeah, I would say it's a star crunch so far. If I have to change that to a raisin cream pie, I will. And I will address it in a future podcast. However, I think it's a star crunch. I think it's a really solid entry. Like I said, it's the middle of all of it. I am clearly invested. I don't think that I realized how invested I was in it because this is a slower watch for me. This is becoming my treadmill show. So it's my little treat when I walk on the treadmill. I watch a couple episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist. So I would say that I guess I didn't realize how well I was tracking the story and or how attached I am to the characters. But yeah, it's a star crunch. How about for you?
That's great. Kind of similar reasoning. I picked a Swiss roll for this one. This is a very nostalgic watch for me. This was only the second anime that I ever watched. So in college, cousin husband recommended Death Note, which is now the second time I'm bringing it up. I watched that and I was like, this is great. Maybe anime isn't weird. What else you got? And so this was his second recommendation. It's one that I go back to pretty often. I would say maybe like once a year, once every other year, I do a rewatch. And so I always enjoy revisiting it. There are so many parts that are funny, heartwarming, all the emotions. And I feel like that when I eat a Swiss roll, because that is one from my childhood that I remember eating. So it's not only delicious, but also just all of the feelings coming back.
Satisfying. Well, listen, if it is in your rotation so much, I'm hopeful that it will remain to be satisfying. And again, just to be clear, I don't know that I need them to achieve their goal. I need them to achieve peace in what they have decided together as a duo.
I don't feel like you're asking for too much.
Good recommendation so far, Sarah.
Hey, thanks. I hope that your sentiments stay the same as you finish watching this show. All right, well, that is it for this episode. If you have watched Fullmetal Alchemist or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, if you have thoughts on which one's better, if you have thoughts on a favorite character, hit us up on Instagram at FoFamPod or email us at foreignfamiliarpod@gmail.com.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for eavesdropping on us.
If you can't get enough of the Cousin Chronicles, head over to Instagram and follow at FoFamPod for more in-depth info and behind-the-scenes details.
Or email us at foreignfamiliarpod@gmail.com.
Foreign and Familiar is a Flynn & Flynn production.
The theme is Colorful by Allerly von Nikolai.